Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of Safe Table Podcast. I'm your host Tanya, and today I have invited Manpreet, who is from a pharmaceutical background. I have invited because I was so curious to know about how does safety works in that world, what certifications you need, how does compliance work, and what is her journey from India to Canada to be a freelance consultant in pharmaceutical world. So let's dive into chat with Manpreet. Hi Manpreet, welcome to the Safe Table podcast. Thank you so much for accepting my invite. How are you doing today?
Thank you so much for having me here. I'm doing well. How about you?
I'm good, thank you.
Yeah.
Manpreet, this is not a regular episode. As you know, I'm from a completely different background from food and beverage, and your background is pharmaceuticals. So I want to know your journey from India to Canada, and I know that you have started recently your freelance consulting.
That's
So could you please share a little bit about your journey with us?
sure, Tanya. So my journey started with gaining strong foundation in life sciences. From India, I completed bachelor's in biotechnology, and then I did my master's and PhD in human genetics. After doing my PhD in human genetics, I worked as a research scientist for 2 years in emerging viral research and diagnostic laboratory. So all the strong experience and skills that I gained in life science sector. So I wanted to put that into something more meaningful. For example, like I wanted to put it into real life applications. So when I moved to Canada, that was the time I started to thinking about pivoting my career to something more useful. So that's when I did graduate certificate program in regulatory affairs and quality operations from Seneca College, and I switched into like pharmaceutical industry. During this time, I gained extensive experience of Canadian regulatory framework, which I utilized when I joined my next like companies in Canada, like Icon and Regxia, where I learned a lot about how Canadian require these regulations. They require us to make submissions and then quality assurance and documentation practices because they are different from back home. So all that is how I started to this. And now, as a freelance consultant, I help small and mid-sized companies navigate into complex regulatory regulations and their GMP compliance.
Wow, that's amazing. You've done PhD. It's when I was in India. I think I was
Mhm.
21 or 22 when I completed my master's in food biotech, and I wanted to do PhD as well. So I did give UGC NET exam. I gave it. I didn't know at that time that I'll be probably moving to Canada in future and doing all of this. That was never a plan. The plan was always to do PhD, be a like professor or open my own institute where I could teach biology. But it's so
Mhm.
good to hear when someone who wanted to do PhD and they were able to do it. It's amazing to know.
Can totally understand. Back home, that's how like we have like the mindset is. Feel like even if you, it's like similar to working that many years. So even if you have worked into an industry for 5 years or so, you still gain that experience. So yeah, definitely PhD is valuable. But then even if you are working in the industry, it is. Mhm.
What job positions have you done in Canada have actually shaped you to be a consultant? Because it's not easy to be a consultant, right? Either you're doing freelancing or you start a business, doesn't
Mhm.
matter. It's taking a lot of responsibility on you for
Mhm.
either it's a food or it's a drug or it's any product where someone is going to consume, and it's the responsibility is on you to make sure it's safe and compliant. So what job positions or what roles you have played that help you in shaping your career towards freelance consulting?
The good thing about my experience in Canada is I have been working with consulting companies only. So I have that background of how to act as a consultant. So when I worked with Icon, I gained the understanding of regulatory submissions and clinical trials. So that made me understand how important is the precision and compliance when we have to bring new drugs to the market. And when I worked in Regxia, I gained understanding in quality assurance, internal, external audits, regulatory inspections, and pharmacovigilance. So this like total diverse background that I worked in when I came to India, it taught me a lot about how to think about challenges from both regulatory and quality aspect. Furthermore, my communication strengthened as I communicated with internal, external stakeholders, including regulatory bodies. So all that part helped me, run my freelance consulting business very well because I understand how the regulatory agencies, the inspectors there, how they think, and I'm able to provide that information to my clients in a concise and actionable
Okay, and do you think so? Someone from a food safety background, is easy for them to, if they want to make a shift in Canada in the
Mhm,
pharmaceutical industry? Because I know from food background,
mhm,
there's so many certifications you need to have understanding of compliance and regulations. Like HACCP is one of them, what we do. So I want to understand. Suppose I'm from a food safety background, and today I've said like, okay, I want to work in pharmaceutical now. I don't
mhm,
want to do this anymore. Is there any transferable skills I can use to
mhm,
move to this background, or I need proper like graduation, post graduation to take roles that what
mhm.
you have already done in this industry?
So definitely, the people who are working in food, they can easily transition to pharmaceutical. I
Mhm.
feel like there are a lot of transferable skills that the food people in food safety can use. Both these industries, food and pharmaceuticals, they work under stringent regulatory frameworks. So that part gives them aligns them into like same
Yeah.
level. Be it HACCP for food and food safety industry or it's GMP for pharmaceuticals, they are both very stringent. In terms of key skills that are transferable, I would say attention to detail, risk management, process audit, and also documentation practices. So these kind of skills are easily transferable because they're done both in food safety and pharmaceuticals. I would say, like even the way the food safety people they are able to investigate deviations or product issues and implement corrective and preventive actions is similar to how pharmaceutical people would do too. So all these skills can easily be used. As pharmaceuticals, it's easy to transition.
Action report and especially documentation management, these are the things that definitely we share. Other thing is, what certifications do you think someone would need either from a food safety background, or if, even if they're not from this background and they want to work in pharmaceutical industry? Was there any additional certification with the college that you had to take be where you are today?
So that certificate is definitely useful, I would say. It takes about 8 months, so it's not a long certificate. It's just like take, and then there's a core program too. So that would definitely help you if you want to transition. Other than that, like I usually annually like renew my certifications for GMP, GCP, and GVP. So all of these are useful certificates because they help you keep up to date with regulatory changes. So these ones are definitely something that can help the people who are in food safety if they want to transition to pharmaceuticals. They can start from this.
Okay,
Yeah.
interesting. And did you
Mhm.
take any co-ops?
I did, yeah. So as part of Seneca's program,
Yeah.
Regulatory Affairs and Quality Operations, they have a co-op course within that. So even the same course with Humber, they also have a co-op program. So it really helps because it gives into the industry.
Okay, okay,
Mhm.
that's interesting. And so when you applied from India for this course, was it mandatory to have some sort of qualification background in pharmaceutical? Or if I am like I have done something in food science, microbiology, immunology, that would work too?
All of that will work. So basically, you just need a degree in science, be it
Mhm.
like any part, so it will help. So that's basic requirement, and then there's a English test too. Too, it's a
Okay,
written test. So
yeah.
yeah, those are the two requirements for getting into this program.
Okay, okay,
Yeah.
interesting. I didn't know that. Okay. Another thing I want to know is, you know how in food safety we do hazard analysis, critical control points, HACCP, all of
Mhm,
those. Like there are certain steps you have to take as a food manufacturer, like as a even as a restaurant, to make sure your food is safe when it reaches to consumer. So how does that happen in pharmaceutical industry? What steps do you have? Because I know drug is a different, completely different category. Has to go through multiple trials and all of those things before it reaches to consumer. Not like I would say food. Food is still like you have a health permit, operating license, you can sell to a small community. Of course, if you want to go bigger retail stores, you have to get through certifications and licensing. That's a separate thing. But I want to know what steps are there when
mhm,
you are someone wants to sell their pharmaceutical drug in the
mhm,
market, they want to launch a new product. So what
mhm,
steps you have in place, and what is your role as a
mhm.
consultant, help them so that they can easily get their product to right product, compliant product to consume?
Drugs, there are multiple steps. So before they reach market, they have to go through stringent process. So first step is when the drug compound is assessed as a potential candidate for manufacturing of drug, they are first they first have to undergo through preclinical trials. So in preclinical trials, the drug compound is tested under laboratory settings. They have to be tested on animals. On animals, basically, we test the safety and efficacy of the product. So once they pass that stage, they undergo the next stage, which is clinical trials. Clinical trials is done in multiple phases. So it goes from phase one to phase three, and through these phases, there's like increased number of participants involved in the clinical trial. So phase one would be like few participants, and then moving on to like 10,000 or even more as needed. So this step ensures that the product that is moving forward is safe, its efficacy is proved, and then it's able to even the adverse events in human beings is tested during this phase. So once they pass this phase, there's a submission to regulatory authorities, Health Canada and FDA, or even outside one. So it's called clinical trial application or investigational drug application in FDA. And then there's the new drug submission after it passes that phase. So during this phases, the regulatory bodies assess the documentation. Data integrity is checked, and it's assessed how safe the product is. So all these steps together, they ensure that the drug that is marketed, finally approved for market, it is safe. Even after it's marketed, there is this fourth clinical trial phase, which is often called pharmacovigilance. So the product in the market, it's scrutinized for any adverse events if it causes in the public, in the patient. That's
Wow.
how
So how long does it take to
it
get through the whole process once
it
the
could
drug
take
is
is
ready?
after it's ready, or you mean to say the clinical trial phase, or even
Yeah, suppose I would say that, okay, I'm ready to now to launch it in the market, or
after
it's
launch?
like clinical
Yeah.
trials are part of the
Mhm.
pre-launch process, like the
Yeah,
approval
so the
process.
first part R&D, it doesn't have a time period, depends on how, right? And clinical trials can also take a few years sometimes, depending on
Oh,
what you're testing it for, how how critical the drug is. If it's just like a general drug which is similar to the one that's already marketed, it will be easier because then it's like reduced testing. But then if it's totally new drug and we don't know anything about it, it could take a few years too. So
so who is responsible to do the clinical trials? Is it the person or the company, sorry, I would planning to launch the drug who approves the clinical trials?
no,
Like,
it's all the company who's trying to do the sponsors who want that product to be marketed. It's their responsibility, so they would pay for that. They often launch it for clinical trials. They often launch it into hospitals. So, but then they have to manage the whole trial.
okay, interesting.
Mhm.
And then what's the role of government? Where do they come?
Government is basically reviewing at each step that the clinical trial phases they are done under stringent regulations, how they are laid out. So basically, they're just analyzing and making sure that there's no harm to the clinical trial patients because they are taking that. So this has to be given by the sponsors.
Have you seen any drug in the market in Canada which is not should be there and you're like, okay, this is not approved? Is it even possible?
It's
Because I'm telling you from little bit. So, you know how food, there is no mark on it, like, okay, unless you have some certification, people want to do it from marketing point of view, you can't tell.
uh-huh,
But if I'm buying, suppose a supplement which I
uh-huh,
use in my
uh-huh,
regular diet, I can see there is a DIN number that
uh-huh,
I know it's approved. So
uh-huh,
how does that work in pharmaceutical world? If is there any number that I can look for or see
uh-huh.
that okay, it means it's approved?
Just you mentioned about the GI number is the
Yeah.
same. So pharmaceuticals,
Okay.
so natural health supplements, OTC drugs, prescription drugs, they all have to be approved by government, and then they are approved given a DIN number, which is to be printed on the labels. And there's like labeling requirements to the health claims that we are making. It's same in the natural health product industry as well. So the claims that we make, it's approved by Health Canada before we can use that in the labels. So all of it has to be the paperwork that is reviewed by Health Canada. They make sure that the claims they match with what actually the product does. So it's strict. You cannot have any product that's not approved for the DIN, like for people, like you can for the DIN. If it's not there, then definitely that product is not approved.
Okay.
Mhm.
Yeah, that makes sense only because otherwise. Anybody could anything in the
Exactly.
market and you can just sell it. Okay, makes sense.
Exactly.
Thank you. What challenges have you faced in the industry when you were working on those roles, and how
Mhm.
did you overcome those? Like, is there
Mhm.
any story or example that you can share with us that, okay, this was biggest challenge that I had faced in my career while working on any particular project, and this is how we overcome and
I would say the most common and like critical too challenge that the pharmaceutical companies face is the ever-changing updates to the regulations, especially in labeling GMP requirements. So if you're not up to date, that's something that can put us back. So there have been like various examples in my past where we were working on a project and immediately like when the regulations change, we have to even restart the work sometimes. So that's important. That's why I said that we need to have the GMP, GCP, GVP, the certifications renewed, probably like most likely every year, because then we know that we are current with those requirements. So yeah, so I help companies overcome these challenges, which is generally faced by small companies because they might not be reviewing the regulations always. So I help them with that. I train the personnel with how to review and then tell them about any changes that happen and also help them. Another challenge I would say is with the documentation practices. If the documentation practices are not good, if there's no like data integrity that can be proved, there could be chances of incompliance or even sometimes inspection failures. So that's something I can also help the clients with because I help them implement electronic data management system, which is more streamlined and it has that data audit part, which can help us to make sure that data is integral. And that's something is challenging in pharmaceuticals.
I completely agree with you. I think a lot of companies do need, especially small scale based companies, do need consultants because when even I started in food industry, the small companies and even the medium sized companies,
Mhm,
they are like 2 to 5 people working together. So they have to do production,
mhm,
supply chain, sales, marketing, then any regulatory and compliance. And regulatory and compliance is a part that is almost being missed by everyone.
that's
And
true.
they need someone to come there, do some sort of magic and just fix it for them. And that's why
Mhm,
I also recommend to my clients to like either have us basis or monthly or semi-annually some
mhm,
sort of plan in place so that we
mhm,
can keep you on track while you are
mhm.
focused on your
Yeah.
production and sales. I think it's same for you, Manpreet, right? In
Mhm,
pharmaceutical, if
mhm,
you're it's a very very important thing everybody's consuming
mhm,
when, of course, when they need to
mhm,
consume the drug. And if you're someone like you can help them to be on
mhm,
the track and they can
mhm,
just focus on production and sales and marketing and
mhm,
you are just handling one bigger portion for them, I
mhm,
think it's a win-win for everyone. So, Manpreet, what advice would you give to someone who is
mhm,
either want to start in this industry or they are just moving to Canada and they are looking for a job? Is there any
mhm,
advice that you would like, okay, this is where you can start and it will
mhm.
help you in your career?
So the advice I would give based on my experience is that so for a job, it's basically you have to be socially active. So the more socially active you are, the more contacts you have on professional platforms like LinkedIn, that can help you get the first break. And then also, like attending any events, like professional events, that can also help you realize what you want to do, weigh the pros and cons, and then enter into the field that you prefer to. And for people who want to enter pharmaceuticals from food, I would again suggest the same thing that have the knowledge of the guidelines that are required, which is like GMP, especially for GMP compliance. And then there's this health and food drugs regulations. So if you are just read through it, go through it, and if needed, do the certifications in GMP, and then that can help you get into pharmaceuticals. But then, as I said, most of the skills from food are already transferable, so there's no much difference as long as we know how to use them in pharmaceuticals and have the background of the regulations for
I
pharmaceuticals.
completely
Okay.
agree with you, especially the
Mhm,
LinkedIn part, networking.
mhm,
It's super, super important. It
mhm,
really helps businesses, or
mhm,
even if you're not in a business, you're doing student or you are
mhm,
into job and you want to grow in your career. LinkedIn is one of the major platforms that everybody should. How can someone reach out to you for to use your consulting services?
mhm,
And do you
mhm.
help in supplement? Could you please more about it? Yeah.
Right. Based on the background, I'm providing consulting in different product chains. be it pharmaceuticals, natural health products, cosmetics, medical devices. I'm doing my consulting in all of these areas, and I provide services mostly in implementing the quality management system. Even if for smaller companies they want to establish their like initial, I can help them with the quality management. I can help them with preparing for auditing, inspections. So that's one of my like fortes that I can help them with. Other than that, there are like other things which they can like licensing is something to begin the like first step. We need to get the manufacturing site or even actual compliance, get them the site license or drug establishment license. I can really help with that. So these are most of my services besides like um, SOP writing and all that. And in order to reach me, they can reach me out through email. My email address and phone number are on my LinkedIn profile. My LinkedIn profile name is Manpreet Kaur, and email address is dr.kaurmanpreet@hotmail.com. So they can feel free to reach me out through any of these. Yeah.
Thank you so much. I'll add it to the show notes as well. Anything you would like to add, or we can wrap up the show here?
That's it. Thank you so much, Tanya, for having me here. It was a pleasure being on your show.
Thank you so much. It was really interesting, and I think this episode was really insightful. I learned a lot as well. Thank you. Have a great
Thank
day.
you. You too, Tanya. Bye.
And that's a wrap up for the Safe Table podcast. I hope you enjoyed my insightful conversation with Manpreet on this episode. If you like this episode, please do share, like, subscribe, and until then, bon appetit!